Welcome back, everyone. This is another throwback video from about 11 months ago on my original channel. Here we talk in this video a little bit about everything, about the forum doctrine, what is public, what isn't public, and just continue to debunk the nonsensical arguments that fraudsters make. Hopefully you guys enjoy. One of the biggest reasons why I feel people were upset in my last video was because they were under the impression I was saying that the First Amendment doesn't exist or should be disregarded, and that's simply not true. The First Amendment absolutely gives one the right to express themselves in the means available. They can go into parks, they can use whatever public facilities or public resources are available. But the point is that all because you have the right to access does not make you immune to engaging in conduct that is harassing or disruptive. So, yes, the First Amendment applies to all if you do so without disturbing the peace. Now, this argument is typically applicable when this happens.
Yeah, that's why there's members of...
This whole building is public. The only thing they can be is publicly can be authorized personnel only.
Which requires legal signage and keycard access.
I have the right to fucking record in public lobbies, vestibules, in any area that's not restricted, unless it's only if I'm not getting jurors and witnesses. I can record all of you and all of them.
So this is where the key issue arises, which really is the problem that a lot of people have with these videos. Not all government-owned buildings are freely open to the public. While, yes, the general public is permitted to access certain areas for certain limited purposes, an individual's right to access the property for news-gathering purposes, simply put, it's limited. And that's probably one of the biggest issues people have with these fraudsters. They say that they're news journalists gathering content for some mysterious story for the First Amendment, but that's not what this is at all. Clearly, this is nothing but harassing innocent people. All right, y'all. Here's some case law. U.S. v. Coquina from 1990. And forgive me for the small print. If you want to look it up online, that's fine. But this case was really the backbone on this argument, because there's some very interesting points that this case mentions. But one thing in particular stood out. The government has the right to regulate First Amendment protected free speech on its property to an extent determined by the nature of the relevant forum. Now, that's going to raise a lot of questions in itself, because there are issues involved with that. But what do I mean? So a big question arises from this, and the question simply is a government building considered a public forum? And the answer is, that's difficult to ascertain. Because according to the case law, it helps us to appreciate that a public forum is determined by 1, the government's intent in opening the forum, 2, the restrictions placed upon the user's access to the forum, and 3, the nature of the forum in question. So what does that mean? Well, going back to the case law, it very strictly says in that case, U.S. v. Coquina, that the government's ownership of property does not automatically open it to the public. And it's interesting because that's what the fraudsters say. They say, hey, listen, I pay for this building. I can march around this building and do what I want. But again, you have to look at the regulations in the law that dictates whether or not a government building is a public forum or not. So let's think of a practical example of this. Let's think about City Hall. Now ask yourself, is the purpose of City Hall, the lobby, the hallways, to allow people to walk around, film people, and loiter, annoy, harass for no legitimate purpose? And the answer, simply put, is no. Logically thinking, the purpose is to go through security, walk through the hallways in order to reach private rooms and to obtain documentations, legal business, or whatever the case is. And fraudsters, as we know, don't do that. And there's even 2 additional questions you could ask. You could also ask, are there restrictions placed on the auditors for filming on the premises? And the answer, again, thinking logically, is yes. You look in their videos, signs clearly ask individuals not to use their cell phones inside the buildings. And judges even sign orders saying that filming inside the courthouse is strictly prohibited. So yes, fraudsters can't just walk into buildings and assume they can do what they want. Ultimately, if restrictions are placed on the forum, that is constitutional. And the fraudsters don't seem to understand that if there are limits to what they can do in the forum, they can be asked to leave. And then another question, what is the nature of the forum? And the answer is the forum is not used for public assembly or documentation of stories. If permission is obtained, maybe yes, with limits, one could film information in the lobby. But the nature of City Hall, or really any government building, is not of this sort. I mean, no one typically stands in a lobby and films in an anonymous way without IDing themselves or saying what their purpose is. That's not the nature of the forum. The nature of the forum, simply put, is to handle business, which fraudsters don't. No, guys, let's not lose focus. Remember what the argument is. Is a government building that people say is paid by taxes automatically open to the public? And based on our deeper understanding, the answer, simply put, is no. If an individual, auditor, or not, were to enter a public building and is strictly told or shown that there is a restriction to whether it's filming the sake of consumers' privacies or loitering and wandering a hallway just because a person can. This is a perfectly reasonable response to these individuals trying to create scenes inside government buildings. And remember the case law, it backs it up. The assumption that an individual can just stroll inside a government building to film or try and enter without taking security measures because they aren't consenting to search and seizures, which is totally nonsense. This is just simply false because the government's ownership of the property, again, does not automatically make it public. But wait a minute, you can't trespass me from public. If I'm in public, I can do what I want. You can't trespass me. Probably one of the most infuriating arguments. But again, Title 18, Statute Fee 3503 under criminal trespass. Section B clearly states that an individual remains in a building after notice against trespass is given by actual communication to the actor. Now, as we discussed in our last video, an individual can waive their constitutional rights by means of their conduct. So when these fraudsters go around these buildings harassing government employees, harassing police, even harassing members of the public by means of their conduct, they can be trespassed from a building that's open to the public. I mean, it makes sense when you think about it logically, but the fraudsters don't want to do that. And subsection C of this statute even gives an interesting defense. It says it's defense if the premises are open to all members of the public and the actor complied with all lawful conditions. So fraudsters want to make it sound like individuals that they're being attacked for their conduct. But no, if they lawfully engage in business and engage fully in their rights and don't disrupt the peace, they can enter the buildings, no problem. And that's the big issue. That's where the real big argument is, because if a frauditor goes to a public building and an individual, an agent of the building says you cannot film, and the frauditor complies, they have every right that's issued to them by the Constitution. Every right. But again, the frauditors don't want to understand that. They want to say that their rights are being violated and they want to file frivolous lawsuits, but that's just simply not the case. Unfortunately, this is another pandemic, so to speak. Nothing about this is going to change unless lawmakers really step up and really take action. Set the law down, help these frauditors to understand, appreciate that actions have consequences. But that doesn't seem to happen. But hopefully these frauditors will become educated at some point. As frauditors, as we know, like to do an education work for government employees, but hopefully they're educated and understand that they are committing crimes and why what they're doing is not lawful. And hopefully, they will come to appreciate that inevitably actions do have consequences. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Some of the topics, they are a bit repetitive. We do kind of talk about the same things, but it's just really reiterating how nonsensical the argument is that, I see building, it be public. Like, honestly, it's such a nonsensical argument that hopefully fraudsters will learn eventually. So again, hopefully you guys enjoy it. Thank you guys so much for your support on this channel. We've made tremendous growth and we're just getting started. See ya.